Greetings, dear ones. I'm Maitri Belul, and this is my Sunday afternoon with Maitri video, but it's Monday. I've never done it late before. I've been doing it a few months now, and yesterday literally flew by, and my daughter was here to help me with something, and I did get a long blog post up yesterday that was lots of fun because it's all about playing. And I wrote to my patrons in Patreon today, and thank you, patrons. It is with the support of my patrons at Patreon that I am able to do my work, bring these videos to you. If you'd be interested in finding out more, links to everything are always below these videos. But I wrote a post to them. I do a public blog post once a week on Sundays. I did a big one yesterday. But all of my other posts and notes and work and art and everything I do are seen by patrons only at Patreon. And their support with their pledges helps me do my work. So anyway, I was saying to them in a note that I wrote them, a long note that I wrote them today, that I'm not a person who does New Year's resolutions or picks a word of the year. And at almost 67, which I'll be in April, and living with lifelong mental health struggles, I've learned not to, and I'm bipolar, so all of that is managed very well with weekly therapy, medication, self-care. I do all of that, and I'm very responsible about it, and there are ups and downs. But one of the things that I have learned is to not make big, huge goals and plans and schemes for the year, because then I will work really hard trying to do them. I will worry about them. I will put myself under so much pressure. I will kind of go into a bipolar tizzy, and that's never good. But what I came to, and what I've come to recently, the last couple of blog posts and videos, I think I've been talking about bringing back all of the bits and parts and pieces of my creative life, which at nearly 67, I started writing when I was 9 years old, and I mean seriously writing when I was 9 years old, which I know sounds funny, but I lived through a lot of abuse, and I would go outside and hide behind a stand of forsythia bushes in a little nook in the ground. And I had my, little red spiral notebook and my little Bic stick pen, and I would write like mad. I wrote diary entries, I wrote poems, I wrote little stories. And while, of course, they were the writings of a child, and not something we would hold up as good writing by any stretch of the imagination, it saved me. Writing has always saved me. And by the time I was 20, I was publishing. I was writing for magazines, newspapers. I had small presses. I wrote a number of books that didn't get published, but I also had a number of small presses over the decades, some very successful, and work that I loved doing. But I was also a fiber artist, something very dear to my heart. I weave, I knit, I crochet, I hand spin yarn. I hand spin yarn using spindles, hand spindles, not a wheel. And I used to have an Etsy shop, and I made hand spun art yarns. I lost all my big fiber equipment in a house fire in 2014. So that curtailed my fiber life. And I had just started drawing and painting at 59, just before the fire. And while it was a struggle the first few years after the fire, because I pretty much lost everything for the most part, and I was devastated, and my emotional state, never great to begin with during those years, just rendered me almost useless for those first years after the fire. But finally, I would draw, I would paint, I would stop, I would start. And then a couple years ago, as you know, because her picture is here on this channel and on my website and my blog and all of the other social media, everything that's listed in the links below this video, you see Maisie. Maisie's World is a place that I have created that's all about this kind of wonky, cattywampus, lopsided, wabi-sabi kind of woman who is agoraphobic like me, but lives, as I do, in kind of an enchanting, colorful little cottage. Neither one of us have much money, and we deal with mental health struggles, but we have created lives for ourselves that make us happy. And that's what my work is all about, as I've said before. That no matter what your limitations in life might be, real or imagined, age, gender, race, financial, physical disability, which I also have, despite all of those things, there is still so much we can do. And after painting over 40 paintings in the last 2 years of Maisie and her world, all of a sudden, it's like lights started to light up in my brain in other areas. I started crocheting a couple months ago. I couldn't follow a pattern to save my life. I do freeform knitting and crochet. I am self-taught in all of the fiber arts as I am in everything else. Probably the only thing I studied in school was English, and that really didn't teach you about writing. Not really. It teaches you a lot, and you learn a lot about literature and so on, and which I loved. But yes, all of these things I've been longing to do. So now I'm back in my studio. As you can see, I'm not in my chair. My foot has pretty much healed after 3 months. It still aches, and it's going to. That residual pain that takes a long time to finally work itself out. But it's so good to be back in the studio. I am here at my big work table. A couple weeks ago, I did a blog post showing several pictures of my studio. I'm at my what I call my work table. It's a 9-foot long, old antique farmer's table, but it was found in a barn covered with stuff. And I bought it for a song when I was moving in here over 10 years ago, 11 years ago now. Gee willikers, it's 2021. Took 4 men to carry it in. It survived the fire. I mean, I think it's heavier than an Indian elephant. It's massive. The legs of this table are huge. And it's worn as pine gets over time, just worn almost with a soft, smooth feeling, and my big computer is just the other side of this phone where I'm recording. All of my writing and everything is on this side. On the other side is my fabric and textile art area. And now I have a painting table that I got, one of those plastic. They're big. It's 6 foot long. It folds in half almost like a suitcase, and you open it up and the legs go out. It's very sturdy. I needed something just for a designated painting table because it was crowded here. I'm in front of my computer where I do all my writing, where I've got books, where I've got everything, and I would get all of my things out. And I'm sorry, my parakeets are very loud. I always mean to cover them, and sometimes I remember to cover them. But anyway, I was saying I was painting here, and I would have the painting that I was working on, and I would have little palettes all around me and all of my art supplies. And then I would have to take it all up when I finished painting that day. It was a pain. Some days I didn't paint just because it was just such a pain to get it all out. Now I have a designated painting table. All of my painting supplies, paints and brushes and dip pens and inks and everything are over at that table. It's wonderful. So I can go over there, sit down, and paint whenever, and then get up and come back over here and write. It is as though my studio finally works for my work, and I've been here 11 years, and I've always loved it, and I've done a lot of work here. It's in better shape than it's ever been. So all of these things are surfacing. Fiber art, textile art, painting, writing. It's the last 2 years, of course I've been writing. I always write. But I've been so concentrated on Maisie's painting. All of these things that I kind of lost that went by the wayside after the fire. And the fire was February 4th, 2014. So we're almost at the 7-year mark after the fire. And it took most of that year to 9 months that I had to live elsewhere while they rebuilt this house. I mean, it was a shell. The fire went all the way up through the roof. When I saw it, after they had really torn everything up, I mean, there were no interior walls. There were no floors. They really had a job here to redo this, and only did it because it was a brick house on a concrete slab. That's the only reason they could even rebuild. But after the fire, I had lost everything for the most part. I'd lost the last of my financial resources getting through that time. And now I live on Social Security, so there wasn't a lot of money to restart. But then things start drifting in, and people gave me things. And I found that while I lost all of my big fiber art equipment, I had a fair amount of yarn and fiber and spindles because they were in Rubbermaid tubs in my concrete garage. So things started coming together, and I bought inexpensive art supplies, and over time you start to patch a life together again. And then Maisie came along, and I just painted intently for the last 2 years, as I will continue to do. But finally, writing and painting wasn't enough. My heart was longing to allow back in, to bring back in all of the bits and parts and pieces of my creative life. And that's what I've been doing these last weeks. And reworking this studio and reorganizing the studio so there's room to do it all. So there's something my therapist always says to me. I love her dearly. I've seen her for over 6 years now, almost just since the fire. And she saw me in the terrible state I was in after the fire. And for some years, and having lost everything and not having financial resources and being in a very dark place and on heavy medication and having to cobble together a life of, I couldn't afford to go to my doctors anymore. I found a clinic. We found services that I qualified for because I'd lost everything and didn't have money and was of a certain age. And, my daughter helped me cobble together the basics of a sort of physical life. And the insurance company rebuilt the house, and I moved back in, and it was kind of like, now what? And so my therapist saw me through all those years. And she said, Maitri, do you realize how much you've done? You've been through so much. The fire, hurricanes, a childhood of long-term sexual and other abuse. But you're here. And no matter what you're doing, you have a positive attitude. You keep coming back, the phoenix rising over and over and over. She says, look at all you're doing. And then she'll say to me, I wonder what else is possible. What else is possible? This and what else? You see, we recover, regain, reclaim our lives over and over again, after losses, after tragedies, after heartbreak. Dreams that have been dashed on the rocks, hopes that we had, people have left our lives, and that is life. And we come back again and again and again. Because what else is there? Somebody said to me, I don't understand how you could have been through all the things you've been through, and you're creating, you're painting, you're writing, you're doing fiber art, you're doing all this. And I said, yes, but I always go back to the poet Mary Oliver's quote. It's the last lines of her poem, The Summer Day. So famous, I'm sure you've all heard them. Tell me, what will you do with your one wild and precious life? Well, I'm almost 67. I'm physically disabled. My feet are really bad from several breaks, falling down a staircase, surgeries on my feet, so that I'm fall prone and have to wear the fall pendant. And the mental health struggles and yada, yada, yada. Everybody's got their stuff. But I have this one wild and precious life, and so do you. And what are we going to do with them? Well, I say I'm going to do everything that I possibly can. And so in keeping with my therapist asking me, what else is possible? I realized that I am going to let it all in. I am not going to set parameters around what I should be doing or how I should be doing it. I'm going to do it all. Anything that comes to me that I'm delighted by, that fills me with joy, that excites me, delights me, I'm going to do it. And so now Maisie's world is expanding. Maisie is a character that is my alter ego, whose little one-eyed Chihuahua mixed dog Daisy is my little Molly's alter ego. And they have a story to tell, and that's what I've been painting for the last 2 years, working toward a book. But there's so much more. In my Society 6 shop, you can get the mugs, the t-shirts, everything with Maisie on it. Linked below, as I said, if that sort of thing interests you. But all of a sudden, I'll have to show you this. I started working in my sketchbook, again, as a daily practice. And one of the things, since I've got fabric all little, I get scrap bags of all kinds of fabric. I will find it cheap on eBay, all different kinds of scraps. I particularly love to get scrap bags full of, I like vintage fabrics, silk, velvet, lace, brocade, just bits and pieces of this and that, like crazy quilt material. And crazy quilts are my favorite kind of quilts. I don't make big quilts. I don't know how to do that. I've never done that. I do small pieces, but I love quilts. I used to buy used, quilts, old vintage quilts and quilt tops that were in poor shape, so they were cheap. Even just the quilt tops, it's like some woman had done all the work of doing the whole quilt top and never put it together. But the fabrics would be fabulous and bright and colorful and cheerful and homey. And after my marriage ended and I was on my own for the first time in my life, and I didn't have much money to do anything, but I wanted to make a cozy home, that's the kind of thing I bought. Lots of pillows wherever I could find them, bits of old quilts, and I would toss them over furniture. The whole place looked so cozy, and you put some twinkly lights and have a couple of candles. You don't need much money. You could create a cozy, warm, delightful, homey, charming life on very little. But I loved the old quilts, and I love playing with fabric. And so all of a sudden, in my sketchbook, I did a quilt. I call it a crazy Maisie quilt because it's a crazy quilt in Maisie's style. And I had so much fun. I showed in my blog post yesterday, which is about playing and playing creatively, and how I started at 59 drawing. I had, for 5 years, I had what I called the 100 Ladies Project. They were only heads. I wasn't about to attempt a body. I show one of them in yesterday's blog post, lopsided cattywampus, hysterical. Then I went through a phase a few years ago where I worked with acrylics, I did mixed media, I showed a piece of that. Then I showed my sketchbook. Now, this quilt, I decided, you see, though Maisie, like me, is agoraphobic, we still got to make money, so I live on Social Security. Maisie has, I assume, a fixed income, and she does all kind of fabric work. She gets old chairs and makes boho chairs. There's some of those show up in her art there. I love those. But and one of the paintings that I did that people love is called Quilting Calms My Nerves. And it's Maisie sitting in a chair, working on a quilt. There's bits of fabric everywhere. There's her little dog Daisy, kind of halfway under the edge of the quilt. Laying on Daisy is Cornelius, who is the house mouse that lives with them. And it's just a charming picture, and people love it, and a lot of people have bought it as a print or poster or tote bag or whatever on Society 6. But I thought, Maisie was quilting. And then I drew this. I started, just like you will, doodling in your sketchbook. I started making a quilt. And all the patches were crazy little designs. And I finished it today. I mean, this is just in the sketchbook. So here is Maisie's Quilt Shop. This is a crazy, and this is just done. I did most of the black, the outline, the drawing, with a dip pen in ink. I finished some of it last night in my chair with I use these a lot. They're ultrafine point Sharpies. Wonderful to draw with, but they bleed through the page. I hate that. The dip pens do not. But I was working on this just for fun. I wrote Maisie's Quilt Shop, and then it occurred to me that I could do, this is just a little sketchbook with like markers and things, just coloring like a kid would with the joy and the play. But I could do paintings, like regular, bigger size paintings. Most of Maisie's paintings are done in some watercolor, mainly gouache. They have very They're very detailed. They have a very particular look to them. But if Maisie has a quilt shop, I could also paint and do mixed media and do these crazy Maisie quilts and sell the quilts as paintings. I'm going to start doing that. Why not? You can now, I'm not going to have an Etsy shop. I can't make enough of anything fast enough to have a shop, but I have my website, and I have 4 pages on Facebook, and I have Instagram. A lot of people are selling their art on Instagram. Just post it when it's done, say, here it is, this is how much it is, if anybody's interested, and then people are like selling their work right on Instagram. All of a sudden I realize there's nothing I can't do as long as I'm willing to put in the work. And so it took me hours and hours and hours just to do this. I love this, isn't it? You know, it's colorful, it's fun. All the quilt squares are just like crazy stuff. But I thought, how fun. I'll still be doing the bigger, regular kind of Maisie paintings. But this is something I can do as an addition to the Maisie oeuvre. I can do Maisie's crazy Maisie quilts, and I'm going to do that. And I'm doing textile art, and I'm doing fiber art, not for sale, just for me, for the joy of it. I'm working on a particular thing that I'm not going to talk about. It's a gift for a dear friend. I'll show it after it's finished and she has received it. I'll show a picture. But it's like, let it all in. Let it all exist. Don't have everything so set in stone. I'm going to do this thing this way, and that's all I can do. And no, let it all in. And whatever comes, comes. At my age, with decades behind me of all kinds of writing, art, fabric stuff, textile stuff, I don't know how it will all manifest. I don't know how it will all come together. But my phrase for the year is the sky is the limit. What else is possible? That's what I would ask you as I end this video. A day late, but thrilled to be here with you. What else is possible? The sky is the limit for you too. Look around your environment. Go spelunking in your own house. That's one of the things I had, an exercise I gave my patrons. It's like, with COVID, everybody has been so homebound, and we think we know what we've got. And if you go room to room, drawer to drawer, closet to closet, cabinet to cabinet, and really look at what you have, I call them gathering baskets. It can be a tote bag, it can be a big basket, it can be a laundry basket, whatever. Carry it from room to room. Slowly go through everything you've got. You will find things you bought that you never used, things you never even opened, old things that you loved dearly and almost forgot you had. Gather together all of the things you love, all of the things you do, all of the things you've missed doing, all of the things you always wanted to do. And I'll end with this, because this is what I say to my students all the time. If not, why not? If not now, when? Indeed. I'll see you next Sunday. The sky is the limit. What else is possible? Take care.